What's up, everybody? Today we're going to look at 3 different ways to develop some core strength and bulletproof your core. We're going to kick it off with an exercise that most people are familiar with, they've had some exposure to, and at the same time we see a lot of people that don't quite understand how they're supposed to be doing the exercise. Maybe they've never been taught in depth on it, and they're leaving a lot of benefit on the table. And we're going to try to get some clarification on that and make sure you are getting the most out of these. And that's a simple plank exercise. Right? Plank is generally the starting point for most people to develop core strength, build the strength and endurance that they need to perform other activities, be it strength training, be it running, be it just daily activities. And it's a fantastic exercise, and we need to make sure that you're getting the most out of it by doing them correctly. Okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So what Mira's going to do is assume a basic plank position on the ground. And the plank can be done either from a straight arm position or from a bent arm position on your elbows. Either one works fine. Okay? So there's a good look at both. Okay? So what Mira's doing really well here is if you look at the line between her hip bone and her shoulder, it's either a straight line or she's slightly into like a strong kind of crunched position, ever so slightly. What we see a lot of people do is their low back sags down to the ground, or even a little bit more than that. This is completely missing the point of the exercise. You're not going to be getting any benefit from doing the drill that way, and you'll probably be feeling an uncomfortable pinching in your lower back. So if we bring Mira's hips back up a little bit, again, a few markers that you want to watch for on these are that the line between your hip pointer and your shoulder should be nice and straight, and your spine should be even there. Okay? We don't want to have the hips up too high. Okay? Or again, we don't want to have them drop down and then sag down low to the ground like that. Okay, so go ahead and take a break, Mira. So that's going to be just the nuts and bolts of the spine and the core position, which is going to be one of the most important parts. Okay? Now that we gave Mira a break for a second, let's also take a look at what the rest of her body is doing if we bring her back up into position. Okay? So you'll note that Mira's elbows are right underneath of her shoulders. That's exactly where we wanted to start people out with. And her feet are at a comfortable distance between her feet. For most people, that's going to be about hip to shoulder width or so. If she doesn't want to go excessively wide, if Mira, you want to demonstrate real wide, that's probably a little bit too much. And then also most people are going to have a hard time getting in good position with their feet all the way touching. So leave a little bit of a space about hip to shoulder width. That's how you stand for most of your exercises anyway, if you're going to be doing deadlifts or squats or kettlebell swings, whatever. So it'll have good carryover when you're doing them from that position. Okay, go ahead and take a break, Mira. So that's sort of our nuts and bolts of it. Let's get your feet about hip to shoulder width. Let's get your elbows right underneath of your shoulders. And the most important part is that we're going to try to get a nice straight line from your hips to your shoulders where your core stays neutral. The most common mistake is people open up and they start sagging their core down to the ground, and they're missing the point of it. As far as how to progress with these, a good goal would be the ability to hold a nice steady plank for about 60 seconds without it being too difficult for you, no more than an 8 out of 10 difficulty. So for now, start with wherever you're at. Could be 15 seconds, could be 30 seconds, but start working up to where you can do at least a minute without it being more than an 8 out of 10 difficulty. Once you get there, and it's not more than that sort of 8 out of 10, then we're ready to start progressing to more difficult versions of it, and that's going to be the next thing that we show here. Okay? So we're not going to be relying on adding weights or external resistance to make your planks harder, and at a certain point, adding more time it's not really that beneficial for most people. So we want to add difficulty, but we don't want to add more time to it, and we don't want to make it too cumbersome and trying to get contraptions out and get going. So what we're going to do is just change the leverage of the exercise, and by changing the leverage, we're going to add quite a bit of difficulty to it. Okay? So on the basic plank, you noted that Mira's elbows were right under her shoulders. Now what we're going to do is make her hands or her elbows, whatever she's on, out in front of her shoulders, and you're going to see this is quite a bit harder. So if Mira goes into a regular plank position, okay, her elbows are right under her shoulders. Now if she walks each elbow maybe 4 to 6 inches out in front of her shoulders, this all of a sudden becomes very difficult to do and hard to even hold for maybe like 10 or 20 seconds, okay? Compared to Mira could hold the other one all day long. All of the other points of the plank stay the same. Go ahead and take a break, Mira. Those seriously get really hard really fast. So make sure that you're ready for them and start slow and incrementally. And again, you're probably gonna hold those for more like 10, 20, maybe 30 seconds, but it's not gonna be the long, say 60-second hold that you would for the regular one, okay? Now let's take a look at how those look when she's on straight arms instead. The distance will be a little easier to cover on the straight arms compared to the elbows. But again, here's a nice regular plank with her hands right underneath of her shoulders. And then if she walks her hands out about 6 inches or so, then all of a sudden this becomes, again, very difficult, very quickly. Hold for about 3 more seconds, 2, 1, and relax. Okay. All right. So there's version 2 for you guys on how to start bulletproofing your core. Step 1 is just a regular plank, work up to holding it for 60 seconds and making sure that we're keeping that good core position. Way 2, let's start looking at adding distance to our hands. We're making either our elbows or our hands farther away from our feet than with the regular plank. And then way 3 is we take away a base of support, okay? For the most difficulty, we would take away one of the hands, and so that's what we're gonna look at here. You could also take away one of the feet. That won't add as much difficulty, but it still adds some to it. So to start with, I would recommend doing the straight arm version for this one. So Mira's gonna go into a straight arm plank, and she's gonna lift up one hand at a time. A great way to do this is just put your hand on your opposite shoulder, hold it for a moment, then return it back to the ground, and then trade sides. All right, and she'll demonstrate one more each way. Good, one more on the other side. Excellent, have a quick break. So that was a great example of exactly how that should look. Most importantly, nothing changed in anything except her arms. Let's take a look at a couple common mistakes for this, which are going to involve her moving her hips up and down and or twisting and turning her body as the hands come off the ground. If you're trying to do this exercise and these mistakes are happening, you're really not getting the desired benefit from the drill, and it's important to make sure that you stay within an ability that you can keep the hips nice and square and level and the shoulders square and level. Okay, so as Mira goes back into it again, it's pretty common that as she starts to put one hand up, that her hips will either lift up or twist and rotate. She'll demonstrate that here, exactly like that. We want to avoid any sort of twist or rotation. Okay, go back down, demonstrate that on the other side just so that everybody can see. We don't want to see that twist or rotation. Another thing that will happen is that both of her hips start to come up like this as she's starting to go, because she's trying to shift weight off of her hands and back onto her feet. That's, again, not exactly what we're looking for. We're not really getting the core strength and core benefit of the exercise. All right, go ahead and have a break, Mira. And just like on the first plank, if the hips start to sag down, that would also be something that we want to try to avoid with it, okay? So let's run through a recap of each. We'll just have Mira spin a 180 just so you can see the different angle on them for the little recap here. Maybe a little bit more to your left. Okay, right up there is good. Okay, all right, so regular plank. We've got, most importantly, a nice straight line from the hips to the shoulders. The elbows are right underneath of the shoulders, feet are about shoulder width. This can also be done from straight arms, so Mira will go ahead and go to that one. It can be done from straight arms there too. So this is where you start. Work on holding this with a great core position for at least 60 seconds. From there, 2 ways to make it harder. Way 1 is we can walk our hands out farther. These get very difficult very quickly. And then way 2, she pulls her hands back underneath of her shoulders, and now she's gonna move into, we call them shoulder taps, where she holds for a moment there, comes back down, and trades it to the other side. So there's 3 ways to strengthen and bulletproof your core. Hope you guys enjoy everything. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Thank you. Good job, sweetie.